time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
I thought Gabe obviously was fantastic for us throughout the game, and certainly it was great to have Shelton back. I thought he made a big difference. I thought he played with good poise today, and those guys were the difference makers for us. Our defense got better the longer the game went. We finally were able to string some stops together and get into transition and make a little bit of a run, but really proud of the way our guys closed the game out.
We're not a corrupt business. Clean coaches. We went to the Final Four last year. And I'm telling you, we're clean. Am I perfect? No. Have I made mistakes? Yes. But I conduct business the right way. And we just went to a Final Four. I've got a lot of my peers that I got unbelievable amount of respect for because I know they work the right way.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome into Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network on a Monday night. We begin a brand new week of Sports Talk with you here. All right, how many of you had the chance today to play a world-class golf course and be wined and dined and fed heavily and also walk away with a third-place prize? Raise your hand if you had the chance to do that today. Let me see. No, that would just be me, the Corn, down here at Harbor Town for the annual RBC Heritage Media Day extra special this time because this is the 50th anniversary of the RBC Heritage presented by Boeing. And we had a beautiful, beautiful day here at Harbor Town. I know it was a little bit overcast, but the sun broke through from time to time. And I got to tell you, the course is in absolutely perfect condition. They could play the tournament today if they wanted to. That's how good the course is. Of course, they'd have to back the tees up a good bit from where we played today.
Not only that, they would have to replace all the divots you made on the course, too.
No.
I don't think you were here. I don't think you saw that I left any divots. I don't know where you draw that assumption.
I just know that there are 3 guys in the hospital because they were too busy carrying you throughout the whole round.
I think Yahoo reported your divots.
Yeah, I think I did see Pat 40 walking around the golf course and taking note of the size of the. I admit that sometimes I leave a divot large enough to bury a small dog if necessary. But we had a great day. My team finished third, so I take home a little bit of bling from here at Harbor Town.
Sure.
And our good buddy Christopher Thompson, this will shock everybody. Christopher Thompson on the 17th finished closest to the pin.
Get out.
That is shocking. I don't know if he bounced it off a sidewalk.
Did he throw it there?
Building.
Did he throw it there?
I don't know. But I was as shocked as he probably was shocked as well.
Now, we
had a great time.
What are you going to do to get one of those fancy, swaggy tartan plaid jackets that they have?
What do you have to? You have to probably give a lot of money. Live out here, give a lot of money, become a member of the club. That sort of thing. That'll get you one of those fancy.
I like those jackets. Those are swanky, man.
Well, I mean, you have property out here. I think you could probably swing it.
Not anymore. I don't have it anymore.
We had a great time. The defending champion Wesley Bryan, South Carolina's own, was here, and of course he's a big hit, being the first South Carolinian to win. Also, a surprise appearance at the press conference by DJ Johnson. He was here to shoot a commercial and popped in on the press conference for a little bit and had a few nice things to say. Then went back to dealing with the taping of the advertisement for RBC. So had a great time with all those folks, and the golf was great. Now we're here. Steve Wilmot will join us in the last half hour to talk about things leading up to the 50th annual RBC Heritage. So you want to be around for that. You want to listen to what he has to say. He'll lay out the details for you as you make plans to come down here in April. Meantime, I know in the real world, I mean, this is truly not the real world. I'm telling you, if I could, I would stay here, never leave, and do the show from right where I'm located every night. You think you could go for that?
I wouldn't like it. I like you having experienced the real world. personally.
No, I don't like the real world. I like it down here. This is
you need to suffer what we're suffering in the real world today.
You know what would happen?
I'm all for shared suffering.
You know what would happen? It was like people who live in San Diego. When they moved to San Diego, they said, this is great. And then suddenly they say after a year or two, hey, this weather's boring. Never changes.
I don't think I'd ever get that way.
It's like the people who moved to Vegas, they never see the Strip, man. That's what happens.
Well, I see a lot of this golf course, I can promise you that. But I know there are big things going on. It's a huge week. You know, we have the confluence this week of football, baseball, and basketball. I mean, we got all three with spring football practice starting at USC Clemson. Of course, the basketball season's coming to an end with the regular season. Some tournaments are beginning. And, of course, baseball, we got the big USC Clemson series coming up this weekend. They both have midweek games as well. So we got so much on our plate to chew on. I don't know where to begin. I'm going to begin, Will, with you. And you heard the comments from Frank Martin. You were over there at his presser today, and apparently a bunch of it was on the FBI probe of college basketball. And if I take what he said in the opening to kind of be what he thinks, he kind of sounds like this is no big deal, that college basketball is not corrupt. There aren't a lot of coaches doing things under the table. There's not a lot of these payments going on between agents and players.
Well, the one thing that he's trying to say is kind of the same thing that we almost were kind of saying with the Dawn Staley Mizzou lawsuit conceptually, and that is it's a lot different to make allegations than it is to be able to prove such allegations. And Frank Martin's contention is, despite the fact that P.J. Dozier's name appears on a balance sheet and Chuck Martin's name appears in an email with an agent from ASM Sports, doesn't mean that these transgressions automatically took place. Now, the other part of this, too, is that these guys get convicted in the court of public opinion. It's probably a far stretch that they'll ever be convicted in an actual court of law. That being said, also, though, it does provide a black eye on a sport that has been having to deal with this sort of shroud that has been hanging over the sport ever since the beginning of the season when the FBI probe first became public. Frank Martin insists that, number one, he does not deal with agents, and number two, he doesn't bring people into his program that either deal with agents in an improper manner, and he also does not deal with anybody who involves the impermissible payments deal. I wouldn't say he was necessarily defiant with regards to the report, but he maintains that his program is not under investigation, that they are innocent, and that they believe that they're doing things the right way and have done things the right way since being here at South Carolina and since he was at Kansas State. He can't speak for necessarily anything that's not on his watch, but from his standpoint, he feels, I don't want to say vindicated, but he feels like they have nothing to hide, and he seemed pretty authoritative when speaking about it. I'm not saying I don't believe him. He seemed pretty convincing in the room there. But at the same time, you look at these reports and you say, you know, how much of this is true? How much of this actually went down? And whether or not the FBI is going to try and sink further into this and try to find, you know, bank statements, wire transfers, things of that nature, the stuff that crosses state lines obviously is under the purview of the FBI. I wonder how much the NCAA wants to actually pursue this, because as we've seen, the NCAA has no desire of taking this to a level where it suspends its big programs, its cash cows, your Dukes, your Kansases, your UNC, because too much of what they bring to the tournament is cash in their pocket.
Well, you know, the key point is I was trying to make on Friday is the fact that if you look at where the money goes, you would think, you know, it would go to the so-called McDonald's All-Americans or whatever. And where do those players gravitate to?
The bigger
top
programs.
So, you know, it's almost like we go to where the banks went a few years ago, too big to fail, and they may not want to touch them because you'll kill the golden goose.
Well, it's interesting that Martin said what he said, and then you've got coaches who were quoted in press conferences after games over the weekend after all this came out saying things like, hey, this is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, this thing's going to get really ugly. Then you see what happened out at Arizona on Saturday with Sean Miller. So I don't know. You got two different points of view here. Some think it's not so bad. Some think it's extremely serious. We'll talk more about it in a moment.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
It is Sports Talk on a Monday night. If you want to join in and participate in what we are talking about, you have something else you want to bring up from over the weekend, 800-956-7266 is our phone number. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com and on Twitter @SportsTalkSC. A reminder, should you lose us over the airwaves for whatever reason, I know you want to stay with us a lot of times when you can't hear us over the airwaves, you can always find us on your digital device, your smartphone, your laptop, your iPad, your tablet, whatever the case may be. Pick us up on our feed from YouTube, our YouTube audio video feed. Also, our Columbia affiliate, in particular on the TuneIn app. The Point Radio does not preempt us, so you can always find us there from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. If you ever miss a show, go back to the archive of our YouTube stream, and you can find the show there and catch up on what you missed. If you did not see it over the weekend, I had a commentary on our website, SportsTalkSC.com, in which I brought up the same points that I made on Friday night from my opinion on what I think we should do moving forward with college sports, which is basically take college sports out of being a farm system, let the pros draft players in any of the sports coming out of high school. If those players are of a mindset to where that's what they want to do with their lives at that point, give pro sports a shot and get paid for it, and they don't want to go to college, then let it happen with no restrictions. Now, there can be other things developed out of this in terms of can you eventually go to college and play another sport like you can now? Can you go to college and play your sport if you opt out of going to the professional ranks? I mean, these are things that would have to be ironed out. But just in general, let the most talented kid coming out of high school, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, like it is now, let them be drafted and make their decision and let them live with that decision moving forward. Take college sports away from being the farm system for the NFL and the other sports, and let those kids who aren't that super talented guy coming out of high school go to college on a scholarship, maybe develop and later on become a pro prospect. Otherwise, just go play college sports and enjoy the opportunity of having your education paid for and everything else that comes with that, plus the opportunity to play high-level competition.
I kind of side with Pro from the analogy standpoint that he made with involving the big bank breakup and things of that nature, and the fact that it's gotten too big in order to mess with. I think, somehow, some way, you can't unpop the cork, because once we have experienced this level of widespread marketing ability in terms of the NCAA tournament, the college football playoff, things of that nature, there's always going to be a gap between people who are ready to go right away versus those who feel that their earning potential can still be realized. And I think that's the part of it that I think you're not getting, is the fact that, yes, there are guys who are able to get earning potential in the pro leagues and they can go right away. There are also people who can probably earn some money while going to college who probably aren't going to make it very highly in the pro leagues, and they still have a market value that can be attached to their name, and they deserve the ability to make money off their likeness because of American capitalism. I cease to understand where the harm is in an athlete being able to make money off of their market value and their likeness. I see absolutely no harm in it.
I mean, the shortcut version is you're talking about the Olympic model.
Exactly.
Is what you're talking about. Yeah, it's very difficult to say because, let's face it, some of the pro leagues are brushing the colleges with sort of campaigns and monies so they will stay their minor leagues. The NFL does it all the time, and it's just one of those things. And I think football is unique in my mind because of the maturity level. Physically,
body level.
Physically, there's no way. A Herschel Walker could have come out of high school and played professional football.
There's one of those in every generation.
Yeah, Clowney probably could have, but there's not many that could have pulled it off.
But Money Moore will think that they can, and that's the problem, because once you allow that to happen, you open up basically the floodgates. And the one thing I will give Frank Martin credit in is the fact that despite the fact that he said that they run a clean program and they don't deal with agents, he does believe that more needs to be done for the athlete in terms of making money off their likeness. It's a point he reiterated earlier in the year when the initial FBI probe came out, and and the Lamont Evans stuff was involved with him. He said we need to do more to be able to make athletes be able to earn money off their likeness and do it from a situation of philanthropic purposes, or put it in a trust account or something like that. Don't make them get the money up front. Do it in that perspective.
Well, again, my position is I don't want college sports to become pro sports. Okay, that's just my feeling. I don't want college sports to become pro sports.
It's already
there.
It already is.
All right.
It's already there.
Let me talk for a moment, please. I don't want college sports to become pro sports. If you want to be a professional, if you think you're a good enough athlete coming out of high school to do so, then go pursue it. The NFL has had the luxury of relying on the colleges all these many years to develop their talent. It's now time for the NFL to step up like the other pro leagues and have their developmental league and take over the expense of that. And for those athletes who think that they are ready to step into the NFL at its highest level or just a developmental league and get paid for that, go for it and see what you can accomplish. Everybody else who's a good enough athlete who can be recruited goes to college and competes there. Later, after your 3-year commitment in college, just like in Major League, just like in baseball, if you're good enough to be drafted and go on to the pros, so be it. I'll remind everybody who listens that a college scholarship is not something to be taken lightly. Take the typical athlete that goes on a 4-year scholarship ride at South Carolina or Clemson. In the nutshell, you're talking about a $100,000 investment just in education to cover the cost of tuition to go to those schools over 4 years. $100,000 saving your family right there. That's one thing. Number two, in today's college sports world, there are now stipends being paid to these athletes to the tune of over, depending on the school, of course, some pay more than others to offset the cost of attendance. We're talking over a couple of $1,000s per semester that these athletes receive. On top of that, if you come from a socially and economically deprived background, there is federal aid that the athletes receive in terms of Pell Grant and other type money that also gives them thousands of dollars that many of them send home to their families. So I'm just sick and tired of first of all, there's no guarantee that any of these athletes in college are going to receive the bountiful endorsement payoffs that you suggest. And then number two, if you do that, if you open it up to pro-like treatment on the college level, you've got to deal with all the other ramifications that come with that, the employment issues, the tax issues. You're opening up a huge can of worms in dealing with all of that just complicates an already complicated sports society on the collegiate level.
And my contention
my feeling is let the pros take the athletes who are ready and pay them.
You're asking to go back to a model that can't be go back to.
Sure, you can. You can do whatever you want to. Absolutely.
The colleges
you pass the rules. If you have enough people who agree, you pass the rules and you move on.
And I'm saying there aren't enough people, number one, who agree, and number two, who want to give up the earning
potential. It's discussed. This has really never been discussed.
But here's the problem. College football will never want to get rid of the ability to get players right out of high school because they want to be able to make sure that their sport stays out of the relative obscurity. We care about college baseball here in South Carolina. Nationally, it's not that big. You're risking college football turning into that if you get rid of players coming out of high school.
Well, Corn, that's one of the reasons why I brought the issue of trust. I don't think college administrations trust each other to even sit at the table and have this discussion.
Because everyone's going to still want to get an edge. It's not like you're going to stop cheating.
If you have that on the table versus having to pay the athletes huge sums of money, then you might want to consider letting the pros take these guys over and take on the payment of those fellas. We'll be back in just a moment. Good to have you with us on this Monday edition of Sports Talk. What a week it's going to be, as we've got so much going on. Baseball, of course, the big showdown series, the Palmetto series between Clemson and USC commences on Friday at Founders Park, moves to Greenville at Fluor Field on Saturday, and then to Doug Kingsmore Stadium on Sunday. Should be a great series. Both teams coming off successful weekends. USC taking 2 of 3 from Charleston Southern. Clemson sweeping Dallas Baptist over the weekend. Very impressive with the Tigers in practically every phase of their operation, pitching, offense, defense. As for the new polls this week, the ranking by D1 Baseball has Clemson at number 14. Baseball America has the Tigers at number 10. Collegiate Baseball ranks Clemson at number 7 and USC at number 23. The number 1 team in the country, depending on which poll you go by, will give the nod to Florida. It's number 1 in 2 out of 3 of those polls. We have got, of course, some conference tournaments commencing this week. You've got the Big South. You've got the Southern Conference. You've got the ACC and SEC women. The CAA tournament in Charleston actually begins this weekend and bleeds over to next week. The USC women, of course, were dealt a big blow by Tennessee yesterday, playing without Aja Wilson, who came down with a case of vertigo. So she missed the game. However, she has been selected a national semifinalist for the Naismith Trophy Women's Player of the Year. The 4 national finalists will be announced on March 16th. So she is still attracting the adoration of the people nationally, and, well, she should. USC pitcher Adam Hill was named the SEC Pitcher of the Week. He was dominant in the 7-0 win over Charleston Southern on Friday, striking out 14. And USC has scheduled a couple of more games in football down the road in the future. According to FBSschedules.com, Gamecocks have signed up Troy to play them in 2021 and Georgia State in 2022. Of course, both of those games will be in Columbia. And this national note regarding golf, the U.S. Open, the USGA announced today that it is doing away with its tradition of breaking a tie with a playoff on the Monday after the conclusion of the 72-hole regular tournament. The U.S. Open and the other USGA championship events, the Women's Open, the Senior Open, and the Senior Women's Open, they will now break ties with a 2-hole aggregate playoff immediately following the conclusion of the 72-hole event. So there goes another great sports tradition down the drain.
They only ever had to invoke it only a couple times, though, especially in the men's tournament. Remember the last was Tiger had the last one? Wasn't
They've had 33. They've had 33 playoffs in the U.S. Open since 1895.
That's not.
They've always been 18 holes.
It's not exactly a big.
But
sample.
I mean that was one of the beautiful things about it. You had to go play 18 holes the next day. It really was. Come on. I loved it. You know, here we go again, Pro. They just keep killing all the great traditions in sports.
It's not about the tradition. It's about actual attention span. You're going to lose attention if you do that.
That's the problem with the sports fans of your generation. You have the attention span of a gnat.
It has nothing to do with the sport fan. It has everything to do with actual people also. People don't have the ability to be able to sit around and watch on Monday after the tournament. They want to get a winner now. They want a winner now.
Well, that's the big debate we always have is, are you crowning the best player or just crowning a champion? Obviously, no, because when people
this isn't the NCAA tournament. We're talking about the U.S. frickin' Open.
No, but we're arguing on a good day. Everybody argues that so and so is the best player. No, that's not what you're arguing. Who's the best player on that day? Who wins the title? I like you would like to see 18 holes, but apparently they're thinking maybe you get a playoff, You could sell that sucker and
delayed gratification is never the answer for anything. Just saying. That's the way it works.
Well, patience
probably
is a virtue.
somebody in television got to him and said, hey, we don't want to televise 18 holes the next day. Let's cut it down to let's just go to a putting contest. I got it. Let's come off the 18th green, go to the putting green, and have a 3-hole putting contest to settle the U.S. Open.
This isn't hockey or what they even said in baseball, where they wanted to go to the international tiebreak when it comes to that possible situation, like they do in softball. It's not that. They're still playing the whole hole. Corn. I mean, come on.
Well, I don't like it, but then again, there's a lot of things I don't
like change. That's your big issue. You just don't like change.
Because there's no reason to change it. It's been great all these years. All of a sudden, we have to change it.
Has it really been great?
Yes.
It's been great.
Has it been great?
It's been great.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Frank Martin, who apparently was not in a particularly great mood. First of all, his team turned it over 21 times on Saturday. That's not great. And not only that, he has got to deal with all this off-the-court stuff now.
I've got zero dealings with agents. I don't mess with agents. I don't care for agents. Anyone that asks me about agents will tell you that I am the biggest anti-agent coach in the business. I don't like how they operate. I don't care for what they stand for. I have one and I don't get along with mine. That tells you how little I like agents. Recruiting has gone from building relationships to walking on hot coals. It's the difference now. It's no longer about building relationships. It is about trying to gather as much information as you can to try and figure out whether or not to recruit. PJ and his family are unbelievable. I don't know. I answered this back then. What that family's done for this school and what this school's done for that family, I would be shocked if they would do anything that would go against the integrity, the values that Ray Tanner, Harris Bastides, and this university stands for. I would be shocked, or else you want to come to school here because they know it firsthand. I'm sure PJ's going to have his moment where he speaks publicly on this. I can tell you he's crushed that his name has been drugged into this nonsense. I'll be surprised. I'm not the investigator. I'll be surprised if he's in the middle of any of this stuff. Surprised. Okay. Chuck, I've been an assistant coach. Because of the landscape that we've created, people want us to recruit McDonald All-Americans. Right? You guys will ask, recruit this. If Phil was here, he'd want to know about 27 different guys that are claiming that we're recruiting. Why are we not more aggressive or whatever it may be? Okay. You have to do your legwork in recruiting. You have to have conversations with people. If you don't, then you're going to get backed into a corner that you don't want to deal with. I've been in a hotel room, not here, at the other school, and a guy put me on the spot, started telling me about how much money he spends on this and this and this. I just stopped him cold in his tracks. I said, stop. Let me explain something to you, brother. I did what you do for 16 years. I never asked anyone for a penny because I do this for the kids. I don't do it for my benefit. Don't ever dial my number again. Walked out of the room. I'm not doing that. I don't care what gets reported. I get it. I'm not going there. No one I deal with is going to go there. And if they do, they won't be with me very long. Chuck's a man of family. Chuck's a man of value, a man of character. Oklahoma City wouldn't have hired him. Tom Crean wouldn't have hired him. And I wouldn't have hired him if he's got a shady reputation. Chuck's a good man. Chuck's not in the middle of this in any way, shape, or form. I don't care what's reported.
All right, Frank Martin at his presser today, and Will, you were there and took it all in. And, Frank makes a very strong argument. He's an excellent speaker when he's up on that podium and behind that microphone. He's very passionate and he's very forceful with what he says. And, you take him at his word with what he is saying. And if you are South Carolina, you cross your fingers and hope and believe that he's exactly right with what he's saying.
I do, but I also think that there could be some on the other side. Again, the fact that the Yahoo Sports people showed their work the way they did makes me believe that they're not just going off of hunches. But who knows? We'll see what happens, and there's probably still a lot more that needs to come out on this side of that story.
All right, we'll be back with more sports talk. Got recruiting coming up in just a moment.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
And speaking of SportsTalkSC.com, our poll question of the week: who wins the Clemson versus USC baseball series? Right now, 55% are saying the Gamecocks. 45% are picking the Tigers.
You know what's interesting, Corn, about that?
What's that?
There is one Gamecock on the current roster who was associated with the team the last time the Gamecocks won that 3-game series between the two.
Let me think. Had to be an older guy. One Gamecock on the roster who was on the team when the Gamecocks last won the series.
He was on the roster. He wasn't exactly eligible to play at that point. He was redshirting.
Chris Cullen? No. Yeah. Probably a pitcher.
It was Matt Williams.
Oh, God. He's been around like 10 years, it seems like.
Well, he was a redshirt. He was a redshirting freshman back at the last time that happened.
Well, you'd have to, coming off of what's happened in the first 2 weeks of the season, I think you'd have to lean a little bit towards Clemson, though you never know what happens when these teams get together. The pitching should be very good. All three starters on both sides have been excellent in their outings for the most part, especially coming off this weekend.
Well, the weird thing, and South Carolina fans will be angry about the two losses, both to VMI and Charleston Southern, but there was fluky stuff that happened in both those games. You think about what happened with Adam Hill in the opening game against VMI, where they had the call that didn't go their way, and the inning that really should have been over ended up getting extended, and VMI was able to get a couple of home runs to really get themselves in front there and never look back. You had the rain delay on Sunday that kind of threw things for a loop also for South Carolina there. And the other part of this, too, is that South Carolina's offense looks very much like a Major League Baseball style offense, or at least the style that they're going, with all the stuff involving launch angles and the sabermetrics and the analytics stuff, i.e. the stuff you hate, where you're talking about a lot of true outcome guys who are going to hit the ball either deep in the air or not at all, because of the fact that they want to get the ball up in the air. They don't want to hit ground balls. They don't want to manufacture runs. They want home runs, and they want things to be in a, again, new age style offense. And so you're going to have days like you had against Charleston Southern where you only have 4 hits and a lot of pop outs and a lot of true outcome situations.
Well, that's why I like the way Louisville plays. I think Louisville puts a defense on edge. Corn, you know what I'm talking about. They move their runners. They believe sometimes in what the evil fans around here think is a bunt is a bad word.
It is a curse word here in Columbia.
But sometimes you bunt for a base hit, but you make guys come off that mound. You make them uneasy, and that's how Louisville has won baseball games. And I'm not saying that's the only way you can win them, but I just kind of enjoy those teams that get aggressive on the base paths and make the defense stand on edge.
Tell you what, Mark Kingston, he does not like to lose. Now, I know that's a stupid statement to make for any coach, but, I mean, he was pissed yesterday that his team lost that game to Charleston Southern. He feels like on a Sunday, you're down to your third starting pitcher both ways, and he feels like if you can get 4 runs only allowed by your pitcher, then your offense should be good enough to cover that, and you should win the ball game, especially at home, especially when you're playing a Big South team and you're South Carolina. He was really pissed that they lost that game at home yesterday. They blew some opportunities. They had the bases loaded in the 8th, only got 1 run out of that, and they went down weakly in the 9th. So he was not a happy camper, and that tells you a little something about his makeup. He is just not satisfied with any kind of a honeymoon period or just taking over this team and hoping to make it to the postseason. I mean, I think he is truly driven to get this team back into postseason play and beyond, and he's not going to settle for that kind of outing by his team, especially on the offensive side.
I mean, I give Clemson a lot of credit just looking at the other side of things. The fact that they had to move up that game on Saturday, or move up the last game of that series to Saturday and play what basically amounted to an impromptu doubleheader just because they wanted to get the game in because of the weather. And you have Higginbotham pitching on a day short of rest, and he goes 7 innings, and he allows just the 1 run on 5 hits, and that 1 was unearned. So that's a big outing for him. And you also had Seth Beer, who had kind of had a little bit of an up and down first couple of weekends, had a hit and a couple RBIs. It's going to be interesting to see these two teams facing each other. You wonder, with this series always being as early as it is, how in tune are the hitters? Is the pitching ahead of the hitting, or the hitting ahead of the pitching? It should be very interesting to see how these two match up, because I think a lot of the blueprint of the season is still being written for both of them.
Indeed. I think it's going to be very exciting, and I think it's going to be some hopefully well played. Both teams are off to a good start defensively. The pitching should keep the games pretty low scoring. Then again, you could see a guy like Beer on the Clemson side of things. South Carolina is still waiting for Olsen and Cortez to start hitting for average. Maybe this will be the weekend they start putting it together, and that will give that South Carolina offense even greater punch.
I think Saturday, Sunday, you could be looking at a slugfest, one of those 2 days. I think maybe the Fluor Field game or maybe the Clemson game. I think you could. There is the potential on both of these sides with these offenses to have one of these games be a slugfest. I think Friday will be a pitcher's duel when you're thinking about Hennessy versus Adam Hill, especially after the start that Hill had on Friday. Again, you question the competition, but when you strike out 14, that's pretty darn dominant.
I think the strongest thing for a pitcher now is when you go into the series, to really get a grasp early on where the strike zone is, whoever the umpire is. Because I always believe in a pitcher testing a batter's patience, and you got to get ahead in the count, because I love the expanded strike zone. You make the guy hit your pitch, not the other way around.
All right, let me jump into recruiting. A lot of stuff over the weekend and today. Today, Emerald tight end Luke Deal picked up an offer from Clemson. He said it was really exciting, a school that he's loved since he was little. It's awesome. See, for the longest time, he hadn't heard much from Clemson or South Carolina for that matter. He also has added recent offers from Florida, Michigan, Southern Cal, Purdue, Auburn, Notre Dame, Georgia, and NC State. He's had some recent contact from USC, but no indication of an offer. He last Saturday plans to visit Clemson Friday after school and Auburn this Saturday. Clemson today also offered linebacker Makia Tung, 6'2", 210 of Baton Rouge. He was at Texas A&M's junior day on Saturday. Other offers include Auburn, Indiana, Kansas, Kansas State, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, and Texas. USC commitment athlete Bryce Thompson confirmed to 247 Sports that he visited Tennessee Saturday. His coach at Dutch Fork, Tom Knotts, said last week Thompson would be visiting the Vols this past weekend. Offensive lineman John Gillott of Dorman was offered by Northwestern. He also has offers from Coastal and Appalachian. Quarterback Taylor Eggers of Richmond visited Clemson and USC Friday. Defensive back Tavion Land of Virginia Beach was at USC Friday. He has a Gamecock offer. Clemson offered defensive end Raymond Cutts of Orlando, and they're in pretty good shape with him. Irmo running back Kendrell Flowers was offered by Kent State on Friday. He also has offers from Wake Forest and Old Dominion. He plans to visit USC Friday and Clemson Saturday for spring practices. He has visited Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Coastal Carolina. USC offered 2020 receiver defensive back Keandre Lambert of Norfolk and defensive back Trent McDuffie of Bellflower, California. Defensive back Marcus Tillman of Orlando was offered by Clemson Saturday, plans to visit this week. USC and Clemson target quarterback Sam Howell of Monroe, North Carolina was offered by Oregon. Quarterback Ryan Helinski of Orange, California made a visit to USC, part of a tour of the Southeast. He was at USC Friday. He also saw Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, NC State, and Duke. To put this in summation, USC is very much in the mix. He loves the place. He loves the coaches. His entire family is going to move where he lands. That includes his brother, who's going to go into med school. And he said that he, in all likelihood, will come to the Southeast unless Stanford makes him an offer and he decides to go there. Otherwise, he's coming to the Southeast. He works with Jeff Blake, the former NFL quarterback. Dan Werner really likes him. He passed for about 4,000 yards and 33 touchdowns last season. And he'll be back to visit USC on an official visit later on in the year. And we'll be back after the top of the hour break.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
And welcome back into Sports Talk, hour number 2 on this Monday night on what's going to be a great week of Sports Talk here in South Carolina. We thank you for joining us each and every night. Let me wrap up the recruiting because I had one basketball